Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order a special hearing of the Agriculture Preserve Advisory Committee for January 30th. Could we have a roll call, please?
Good morning. So we're going to start with Sergio Ricardo,
Here?
David Lackey,
Here.
Alex.
Here.
Okay, so we do have a quorum, and Stephanie Stark will be joining us shortly, and Royce Larson will be absent today.
Okay, great. Do we have any members of the public that would like to speak on items that are not on today's agenda?
We do not have anybody in the audience, and we do not have anybody online, so we do not have any public comment.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Well, since we don't have members of the public, maybe we'll keep the meeting open and give the chair maybe 5 minutes or so to make it here, and then we can resume our discussion of item number 1.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you for waiting. We are now on item number 3. This is a continued item, and the committee is going to discuss what was talked about at the temporary ad hoc subcommittee, and a draft presentation was provided to the committee, as well as the list of topics that we had been generating from our last meeting from July or January. So in your packets, you should have a draft of the presentation, and I can certainly walk through it with you. If we could pull that up, maybe, Teresa. I was thinking we could do slide by slide, or if you had just some overall comments that anybody wanted to make. But what I did is I mostly worked off of our list of topics. And with that, I tried to keep this number of slides at a minimum, just focusing on what was talked about at that original meeting back in October with the board. So hopefully I hit part of the mark, and happy to hear from any and all comments. So we want to make it as concise and as informative as possible. And was Royce able to join us on phone, or?
So Royce will not be joining us.
Okay, okay, thank you.
He did provide a comment, and I included that in the packets.
Okay, very good.
Madam Chair, so I like your idea of going slide by slide, so that would be my preference, but I'm also open to whatever the rest of the committee members want to do.
Yeah, I think that's helpful, and maybe just initially, I think you provided kind of like an outline, like these are the things, major subtopics that we're going to touch. And then I guess my initial comments, I think that's probably a good understanding of the flow and the content of the main topics. And I thank Teresa, but I'll thank her again for her email that she sent to us. She put the timestamps for the board hearing, which made it really easy and convenient to go back and watch the video of the board's discussion. And so I did that this morning. And so I just took some notes, and I kind of came up with 4 kind of main questions that they posed. And there were some nuances to that. But so I think the presentation addresses some of those. But I think maybe we can think about how there are some other points that they raised that I don't know that we clearly have outlined in the draft presentation. So just my, review of the notes. First question was, is there more we could be doing to promote compliance? And so we do talk about, the concepts of compliance, but maybe just we need to weave in, this is kind of what we do. And I guess that obviously there's some limitations of what that involves without further, direction or guidance from the board. Second question was, what happens in non-renewal? I think we have a lot of that. You provided kind of the information of both the process, and then once you're in non-renewal, what happens? This is one that I think we need to kind of think about how we can be responsive to the question. So this was really more on, does the county have any ability to go back and recoup some of the revenue, for those recommended non-renewal contracts? Part of it is non-compliance. And so and I think that got kind of woven into that perhaps many of these were non-compliance for some time. And so the question was, does the county have any ability to go back in time and recoup some of that, revenue that the landowners received, even though they were in non-compliance? So I'm not sure how we, research that and talk to, they were referencing the treasurer tax collector as maybe somebody that can answer that, or, our abilities. I don't know if it involves council, but that's one topic that I think we probably need to address, be responsive to.
Did get That particular one did get talked about when I met with Lisa Plowman as well as Michael Daly, and then our director. And I just heard no, that is not possible, but we didn't really talk more about how to. I'm
And I think
happy to
that's
explore
probably,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just think we need to be ready to,
absolutely.
hearing to answer it, even though
Yes.
it's not part of the main presentation.
Yes.
And then kind of related to the content that we already have in the questions, I think the last one that I had was from Supervisor Lavanino. He said, it'd be interesting to examine how many other contracts are out there that are in non-compliance, because, he kind of tied it to, that's, potential, lost revenue that the county isn't recouping. So if they're in compliance, they shouldn't be in the program. So there's potential opportunities to through non-renewal or other means to then for the county to recoup more in terms of the taxes. So it may come up, but I mean, some of their questions we maybe need to think about potential ways or other, whether or not we need to research. We think other jurisdictions have done something like this because they may be wanting to at least generally give direction to explore other opportunities. And so if we have thought about it ahead of time, I think at least we'll be able to at least provide some response if those questions come up. Those are just the main key questions that I drew out of watching the discussion at the board.
David, I like that you're bringing us back into the purpose of the presentation. And I agree totally 100% with we need to address these questions for the board of supervisors. I think maybe one way to do that, because I like the PowerPoint presentation that the chair put together. Maybe what we could do, and this is only my opinion, is maybe incorporate these questions into some of the slides where we're talking about like for instance, when we're talking about compliance, maybe incorporate the question with an answer. And that way we are basically, hitting the points that they want to hear about from us. And so that's what as I was hearing your number, listing the questions, I was thinking, well, maybe just incorporate the questions within the slides that talk about those topics. So that would be my suggestion. Unless, David, you were thinking maybe, I don't know if you have a suggestion as to how to incorporate answering these questions within the presentation. I don't know if there's different.
No, I think your suggestion is a good one. I think we have a lot of the content, and maybe there's some things. It's really more just, I think it's good to just take a step back, and part of it is there's a lot of information on all of these slides. And I think one of our goals would be just to kind of streamline so it's not information overload. And then part of that is thinking about, or what are the main things, at least we heard that they wanted. And so part of it, I didn't list it as one of the questions, but it was sort of we've never, maybe it was Supervisor Lavanino had mentioned, ever since I've been on the board, we really haven't had a kind of briefing on the Williamson Act program. And so that's sort of the 101 portion. So I think that's kind of what we're leading off. And so it's kind of, let's give them the high level Cliff Notes version of what we think is important for them to have a general understanding of. I think then it leads into a general understanding of the preferential tax assessment, both from the Williamson Act perspective and then some of the numbers and what that means. And then maybe we, kind of then lead into some of the other, in terms of compliance. And, these are currently tools and how we do it. So I think it's just thinking about how we thread it so it's a logical discussion, but not overload them too much with too
Absolutely, I agree. I think the reason we put it this, we put the presentation this way is because of maybe we were thinking that they needed more education. And you're right, maybe that's, but that probably should be something for a later meeting and not maybe for this, for this,
We just have it in our notes.
all of,
7 different bullet points.
Yeah, I agree. And some of those items we could just say verbally, but I think we just, what Sergio and I were thinking is let's put more on there than not,
yeah, yeah.
rather than strike it out.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I
Yeah.
think it's a great start and it's just kind
Yeah.
of tightening
Taking
it
it
up.
down.
and-
Yeah. Any other opening comments from members? No? Okay. Okay, so with that, what I have on my laptop is just an actual version of it, so maybe I can, make some notes while we're talking. But I'm also open to whatever if we want to change even the style. I mean, I went with the plainest one I could find. We have our own in the department, but I was trying to pick something not related to the department, just pick something neutral. But we can change that up too, so the
And
style.
just as a FYI, so we just recently landed on our P&D approved PowerPoint that we should be using. So I can send that to you if you want to take a look at it as a template.
That's great, thank you.
Different.
Okay, so this is our first, I just made a presentation overview. There's a lot on here and maybe we can combine some of these as clump them together as subject matter. There's a lot of bullet points. I'm thinking this presentation would probably be 10 minutes, something like that, not too long. And as was stated in the, just from what I'd heard from our Lisa and then from Jose and also Michael, that they were really looking for something high level. And like David was saying in the discussion at the board in October, it sounded like, let's keep it high level. So that Williamson Act 101, I think that's why I put that up there in quotes, because they had referenced it. So I was trying to make it very simple. But these will change as we change the content. So, but I did have an overview of the Williamson Act and definitions. Just I find there's confusion in general about these different terms between LCA and Williamson Act and Ag Preserve. Just overview slide of the Ag Advisory Committee, the Williamson Act 101, how Williamson Act land is taxed. I put in a slide about the annual questionnaire. There seemed to be a lot of questions about that, and it does tie to our enforcement and how the assessor does their work to assess the properties. How much money, well, I guess I could rephrase that, but just my thinking was to have a slide about how much money the Williamson Act contracts save our landowners and cost the county. Yeah, I was debating how to phrase that, and that's a kind of a sensitive issue. Yeah, and I just put something straightforward in there. How you get out of a Williamson Act contract. I used some of our training slides also that David and I went through to train some planning and development staff we've used in the past. A slide on compliance and enforcement, but my thought was we could break that up into separate slides. County initiated non-renewal process, and then just we did a case study, and that was a suggestion from Lisa. She thought to go back to the original 6 cases that were brought to the board in October. And that way you really loop the board back to how these cases came to them and what were they about? Why did they non-renew? So that's why I included that slide. So
maybe just adding in parentheses, after case study, the non-renewals examples.
yeah,
Non-renewal examples.
Yeah.
So that, case study kind of, I don't know, maybe
Confusing.
confusing.
And we can go back to this one after we amend some of the content. I think that's what I would suggest. I did this slide last, so. So the next slide, slide number 3 is an overview of the Williamson Act and definition of terms. This seemed like something that would help the board orient themselves to the program. There's a lot of, I think, like I'd said, confusion between what's the Ag Preserve program versus or Ag Preserve versus a Williamson Act. That's a real, I think, a source of confusion. Some counties use the term LCA contracts. Uniform rules, there's a much longer term that we use for that, the actual title of the document, but I went with uniform rules. But does anybody have any thoughts on this slide or any suggestions?
Well, I was just going to suggest for the bullet, the uniform rules, your definition is local rules interpreting the Williamson Act. I was actually looking at how it's defined on the actual uniform rules. And I was just going to make a suggestion to maybe instead of saying local rules interpreting, maybe just say local rules by which the county administers the Williamson Act, because I think that I took that from the actual uniform rules.
Yeah, I had the same edit.
Okay.
Essentially, yeah, I had said local rules for administering Williamson Act contract.
Okay, for administering. Okay.
Maybe, rather than having just kind of this slide be kind of individual bullets and clarification, another way of kind of is kind of a storytelling. And I only bring that up because I was trying to Google for some of the more recent, or I was trying to find out when they ended subventions. And so I saw this kind of final Williamson Act status report from 2020 to 2021, which the Department of Conservation I think by legislation, they were supposed to do this every 2 years and report on the status of the program. But this was essentially their very last report with the changes, I guess SB 574 layered, basically watered down a lot of the administrative requirements, both for the Department of Conservation and reporting and anyhow. So there's some good information in layman's terms describing, a statement that it's been the most successful state program for protecting open space lands, some initial statements of why in 1965 it occurred because of the increased, development after World War II, and agricultural land was being assessed at, the speculative development rates, and therefore this program helped to address both protecting ag lands, but also not forcing agricultural landowners who wanted to still do agriculture to sell their land because of the taxation. So just a suggestion I can give the chair and the committee, this report, I'll send that to everybody. And then I know that you had also looked at sort of the introduction section of the Williamson Act that kind of has some of that in different areas that we could maybe, glean statements. But so that, and then as you're telling that story, one of the things that we have in our introduction is that, the county of Santa Barbara has participated since 1967, I think. So we were early adopter, and that part of the Williamson Act requires participating agencies to adopt local rules for administering the Williamson Act contract. We call that, Santa Barbara County adopted those rules, and they're, referred to as uniform rules. And they provide both state regulations and also the board's regulations for uses on contracted land. So it may be you may be able to kind of through that get to the points of the definitions and the terms that you want to do just by kind of telling them the 101 story of how the Williamson Act came about. You know, was the Land Conservation Act, you know, also known as the Williamson Act.
So you're saying no, don't do a list of
wouldn't-
definitions, instead?
I
weave it
wouldn't. I
in
think it,
and
because I think
don't-
there's some good, you know, origination information that they might be aware of, and you know, and I think just even from the Department of Conservation's literature, you know, that they, you know, concur that it's been one of the most, you know, effective programs for protecting agriculture. You know,
Okay.
so it's,
So what, and one thing you're bringing up, I wanted to mention, I haven't already, is that my intent is to also have in the document itself the actual narrative of what I will be saying. So I haven't even hit that yet. I'm just doing
Right.
this first. But it sounds like you're saying you could do that up front, or when you cover the Williamson Act 101, you could weave in some of these definitions.
I think so. But
Okay.
that's just one suggestion.
Okay. So possibly strike the slide and weave it into the narrative. Okay. Any other comments on this slide?
The last line, is that supposed to clarify the last bullet?
Yes.
So the committee, we don't administer the program. We advise board, right?
I got this, I think, from a prior training or from the uniform rules themselves. And that's when somebody, well, just today, somebody talked about a local rules administering the Williamson Act, and I thought, oh, okay, because I thought the way it was described was that we were the administrators.
So we have in the uniform rules where the role of the APAC committee, you know, does say that we're, you know, advisory board of supervisors, committees responsible for administering the county's agricultural program and uniform rules. Duties include.
Yeah. Okay.
And I thought about putting in the advisory to the board, but honestly, based on some of the comments that were made during the AEO, I kind of thought, I don't know if I want to do that, because there was some discussion about how we should be really involved earlier on at the planning commission level. So I didn't know if that was a good call. Maybe you guys might have other thoughts.
Well, I like the suggestion to maybe perhaps getting rid of this this slide. The overview of the Williamson definition of terms, and maybe replacing with something like what David suggested. And then I like the next slide, which talks about the APAC, which is our roles and responsibilities. So that would, I think that kind of would flow nicely with, yeah, you have a little bit of the history and what the Williamson Act is all about. And then you move on to the APAC and what our roles and responsibilities are, which we go a little more into detail on slide number 4.
Okay, so let's move on to slide number 4. This is the slide about APAC, and go ahead.
And I like everything here, except I would add one more bullet under roles and responsibilities, and that's just, again, from the uniform rules that actually does say everything that you've listed there, Stephanie, and also it says makes recommendations for creating ag preserves, entering new contracts, terminating contracts, and making revisions to contracts. That's how on page 4 of the uniform rules, that's how it
Is there a way we can make that more concise?
Again, David, advisory to the board and planning commission, is that in uniform rules?
Not
So don't say that. I know it's not
It's
in
not
the
plan-
uniform,
yeah.
but, okay, that's why I put that in there, but strike it.
I definitely
I would
would.
strike planning commission.
Okay.
Probably should think of changing the name of the committee, the title of the committee to include administration.
What's that?
Advisory and Administration Committee.
Going back to that other slide, didn't want to lose that thread. Did you? So we're getting rid of this slide anyway, slide 3, but
Right.
we have administers the Ag Preserve program, but
And that's exactly how
Yeah,
it's stated on,
did like
Yeah.
that, yeah.
under number 6, role of the APAC.
yes,
under-
that's where I got that from, right? Okay, but we'll probably not keep that slide anyway. So under this, and you were suggesting, Sergio, to, what was the language you were thinking?
I was thinking the same language that's used on the uniform rules. So if you look at this, I can read the sentence.
Yeah, what page is that?
Page 4. And it's number 6, role of the APAC. And if you look, I think it's the second maybe sentence. The committee is responsible for administering the county's agricultural preserve, the uniform rules. Its duties include reviewing applications. You have that, review planning applications.
To me, that's a lot of detail. I would just put something more,
Yeah.
uh,
In the narrative, maybe.
yeah, I mean, you could say that more. At the very top, it says administer, monitor, and enforce program of monthly meetings.
I would even shorten some of these bullets and try to
Yes,
just
Uh-huh.
give you a prompt and then you talk, right, about it. We don't want to have much of
right.
Yep.
definitions.
Like that first one, I would just strike and say administer, monitor, and enforce. You don't have to say Ag Preserve Program, but you say that, you know?
Yeah.
Right. I hear what you're saying. I'm trying to find something that would be. Yeah, yes.
Page 4 of the uniform rules. Yes, that's exactly it.
We could say something like, I mean, to me, that's just administering the program.
It is part of the duties. It's what it includes.
And if they
You're right.
ask, what's example, I could say, administering, monitoring and enforcement of the Ag Preserve program, such, for example, we review new contracts, make revisions to existing contracts,
Non-renew contracts.
yeah, terminate them, I
Terminate
could say that. So
We don't like term, yeah, I mean, a lot of that language I think is nuanced, that, disestablishing preserves.
I
and
wouldn't
stuff.
say that. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, it's
I-
just reviewing new contracts and.
And maybe the way you have it is, maybe those can be things that occur at the monthly meetings. I mean, typically we're reviewing all development applications on contracted land. So they have to be reviewed by APAC for consistency with their rules. Also considering applications for new contracts, considering compliance and potential recommendations for non-renewal, and also, providing recommendations to the board on potential uniform rule amendments. So maybe just give a couple examples of the type of activities that happen at these monthly meetings.
Yeah.
So yeah, so then maybe something that would work is having the advisory bullet be that the first bullet that you show under roles and responsibilities, and then go into administer, monitor, and then go into monthly public meetings. And then as a
Mhm.
subset of the monthly meetings, you could have the review and the administer kind of those two bullets under,
Mhm.
under the monthly meeting.
Make bullet number 4 under monthly public meetings.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I can do that.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I think you hit everything
Mhm.
that we do. And yeah, I don't know, maybe the reviewing of the new contracts,
I could
that'll
say
go
that.
under the, you can
Yeah.
say that, yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Doesn't have to be there.
I had to think about a minute about what W and M were on your,
Oh, weights and measures?
yeah.
Oh, okay, I could, it's always a tricky thing to spell that out. It's so long. Yeah, it's not good to abbreviate. All right.
I think it's fine just to say Commissioner's Office on the slide, but you can say the official name of the.
Yeah. We'll see what our director says. And then also the bullets, I'm thinking more smaller text than this is a nuance, but we're all here about nuance today. So the roles and responsibilities is one font size, but decrease the font size. Is that standard practice? No? I was told it was underneath.
Yeah, generally each.
Subsequent is smaller.
Yeah, if you're gonna indent it.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
All right.
And that's, yeah, like on our template, they have different, already set up that way. So if you want to,
Oh.
if you think that's a useful one, it's already set up that way,
Okay.
different font sizes.
For the county surveyor, we probably should have had Public Works Department.
Oh, I'm sorry. Of course.
Since we are listing
So just put Public
Yeah.
Works Department.
the dash county surveyor's office.
Okay.
My director might get angry.
Yes. Very well. Okay. And then I could spell out University Cooperative, University of California. I could spell that out too. I mean, it's not good practice.
That's good.
It's fine.
Okay. All right, slide number 5. This is just an older map I pulled from a previous training that we had done, but my thought was to get a revised map. Wouldn't make too big of a difference, but that's why it has 2023 on it.
The assessor just completed one for 2025.
A map or?
Map.
Oh, great. Yeah, I was thinking I'd use someone else, but that's great. Okay.
I can make it happen.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
The one thing I wanted to add to this, maybe add to the title statistics, say maybe 2024 statistics to
Yes,
clarify that these are for 2024
yes.
statistics.
Thank you.
And then Royce did provide sort of his comments on the map in our packet, but kind of aligning with that was kind of just, he had comments relating to the statistics. So in the past, and I think this was actually our P&D map that we had Brett generate, we normally would characterize the acreage of ag preserve in relationship to other agricultural zone lands, privately zoned lands within the county. So basically, those are lands that county has control to our policies and programs that potentially could be, eligible for the Ag Preserve program. So obviously, we don't include any federal lands in those calculations. And so once we land on, it sounds like we're going to use the 2004 statistics, right?
Mhm.
Sergio, rather than it came from the assessor's report.
So this is overall county, 29%.
Yeah, 29% of the entire geographical area.
No, but that doesn't have, I mean, I don't think that's relevant statistic. a
We
measurement.
can strike it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
like
thinking
the
about
idea,
that. I was
yeah.
thinking, maybe not. Just, I think the map will tell you that it's about a third of the
Yeah,
of the county.
That's-
But yeah, no, we can strike it out.
I think the way that we've characterized it as in relationship to agriculturally zoned land in the unincorporated areas, is that it shows that, majority of those lands, those agriculturally zoned lands are enrolled in the program. So I think the numbers typically are between like
Yeah,
64 and 70% of
yeah.
those.
excluding
So do we
urban
want to
areas,
say that or
including
have a
cities.
statistic or just strike it completely?
I don't know that we need to have it on the statistic on the map, other than,
So don't include the little, the graphic representation at all on the stats.
I wouldn't on the map.
Hmm.
For this, we could characterize it the way that I had suggested we have done it in the past, and I can have Brett get those numbers of, how many acres are in the unincorporated area have ag
Potentially,
zoning.
legible to.
Yeah, so
be part of-
I think it's like 780,000, and then we've got 512,000, so it's, 70% or whatever that number comes out of those lands that are, zoned ag actually are in the program. So I mean, that's, it shows that it's a popular program and in and of itself. So that those statistics could just be, some talking points about the map.
I also I would keep APNs and number of contracts as well.
Just curious, what don't you like about having it on the map, the statistics? Is it,
Oh, it's more just a scale, because then it takes away from the scale of the map.
Oh, okay.
you could also inset
You
it
could do an
into the
inset,
map.
yeah, and that's
the other
fine too,
thought I
yeah.
had was to do an inset.
The other thought, these same statistics, because I was looking at the assessor's 2024 report that we have on our website. Because later on you have, sorry, on page 13, and I think this is another one of those trends. This is the trends for non-renewals,
Yeah.
between 2017 and 2025. And previously, I was thinking of showing, or at least having some trend of acres in the Williams Neck program. Now, it kind of always goes up and down. And so I thought I had a map showing that, or a graph showing that. But what I did do is go back to when the board adopted in 2007, kind of when we overhauled the uniform rules, the EIR for that effort had data from 2005. So it's kind of a 19 to 20 year period. And at that point, there was 550,400 acres in contract. Now we've got 512. So I think we could just somewhere, I think it'd be good just to show, or at least talk about the trends of, because it involves new contracts and non-renewals and what does that affect? And so, yes, it's, over 20 years, it's reduced, but it's about 7.7% reduction. So it's not an overall big loss, but it's a cumulative reduction over the last 20 years. So I think whether it could be a back pocket data thing that we keep, or we just, when we're talking about trends in the program, because we're talking about non-renewals and enforcement and the contracts, and is it still a program that people are interested in, at least that, whether it's a graph or it's just a bullet point, that we could have those statistics may be helpful. So
You're trying to understand. So you're saying instead of having trends of non-renewals, you're asking for number
in
of,
addition to, no, this is good.
I think this was asked for,
Yeah. I just used this as it spurred my thinking of
Oh, I see.
another trend map that may be useful, and that's the trend of how many acres are enrolled in the Ag Preserve program. So we've got data from 2005 that we can at least go back to, and then currently, or at least the 2024 data. and then kind of just show that trend that over those, 19 to 20 years, there's been a reduction, 7.78% reduction. But overall, and some of those can be attributed to like Bixby Ranch, because that was, 10,000 plus acres, and their ag preserve contracts, they, for other reasons went out. So, but we continually see new contracts and even people that non-renewed come back into the program because they realize the benefits. So it was more just a trend.
Yeah.
Is that a
So can,
helpful information?
can somebody provide that data in a, perhaps, I don't know how we want to show that.
So, okay, it's just to be clear, you want me to give you acreages over the last 10 years, maybe? I can do that.
That could be the way to do it as well, if you want to do that. I mean, I have two endpoints that I just was easily accessing and just showing that over the last 20 years, it was just sort of a general trend. This is, over the last 20 years, we've had a slight reduction.
Uh-huh.
If you have data to, do a graph or something, we could do that, but
I do have the data that I can provide. Now, I want to clarify that one thing that I had to do for this presentation is I separated
conservation.
the conservation easements, I separated other stuff that didn't really,
Yeah, I was going to ask about
Conservation.
that because I know that they're in that report.
yeah.
This table could, those trends could be added as a line going across these, like, yeah,
another-
that could be part of the same table. So we don't add more slides,
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
So perhaps, those gaps, they are gonna ask, most likely, why are these gaps, in some years, nothing happened, or somehow the county initiated non-renewals come in these, 3-4 year gaps. Why? Why does it happen? We probably should be able to answer that.
Yeah.
And
And
then
that
maybe
might
there's-
bring up more questions about the, I don't know, the processing.
Yeah.
So,
So David's suggestion could be a line that goes across these bars. Just label that in the legend what it is.
I mean, and adjacent to the existing ones, the number of contracted lands under contract.
Label that, define that as an acreage, total acreage per year or something. Instead of adding an.
So would you just on the right-hand side vertically have a scale of like hundreds of thousands of acres and then just have the bar?
Because the scale is graphically, quite a bit different.
Right.
Yeah, you could fit that into.
Because one's numerical, just a unit of numbers, the other one is
You should probably
acreages.
Find what it is.
I can do the easy part and provide the acreages. And then however you want to
Huh.
manipulate. the
Yeah, this
graph,
is an
that would
Excel
be-
thing. It's just
Yeah.
something you use in Excel. And then a little bit too, a little confusing on this is, it goes to 2005, 2025, and we're now in 225. So these are, these are probably,
Because that includes non-renewal start year. That's what
Yeah.
that is. Like either we need to make it 2024 for the layperson,
mhm.
because I think you were being very precise in these 2025 numbers, that they're ones that include non-renewals that are starting because of the board's action last year.
Exactly. That's when they become effective is what I'm showing here, or what
Oh, okay.
Terry is showing here. Yeah, they became effective as of 1/1/25, but they were approved in.
Maybe we just, instead of saying 2025 non-renewals, just say non-renewal start year. Is that a correct statement?
Start year, yeah.
So
Or
that-
effective,
So at the top where it says, non-renewals,
Right, maybe just say
Say
non-renewal start
start
year.
year.
For the layperson, that may make more sense.
yeah, that makes.
yeah,
sense.
you're right. I thought about that
Kind of
because,
spread over the timeline.
Mhm.
There's,
Yeah, good. Because if you're wondering what this means.
Right, because even the
imagine the
2021,
board.
yeah, if you look at 2020 and you see all the owner initiated ones, you're thinking, oh, these are pandemic related, but they're actually, all of their actions occurred in 2019.
2019, most
It
likely,
wasn't pandemic related.
right?
There's some cumulative effects of all these actions, right? Because it's 10-year period, so it would be cool to see, the wave of these in a cumulative way. It would be
What do you mean?
of the non-renewals, right? And um, how they kind of build, because, in 1 year, you get a non-renewal and then it's effective in next 10 years.
Oh,
You have next year, you
Yeah.
add more to it.
you,
So it probably will show some nice trend.
one,
it's-
one thing we could do too is you just have another option, instead of like having the two bars side by side, you can have a bar on top of a bar. So like
Yeah,
2018, you've got green and you have another,
yeah.
or a blue will be, below that. So it's just one bar. So maybe
Yeah.
you could do that.
I think maybe an argument for having a separate trend map of just the acreages is just because of the information of these non-renewals. This doesn't tell you, this just tells you how many contracts started non-renewal, but the other trend, if you took a longer 20-year, if we had data of how many acres were under contract from 2024 to, or 2004 to 2024, that's long enough time to take into account lands that had gone into non-renewal and are out. And then, it'll take into account those variations of land that's no longer under contract, as well as new contracts over a longer period, so that you see that trend that we started off in 2024 around 550,000 and now we're down to 512,000. But there's reasons behind that, but it's overall still a pretty stable program. I think that's really the messaging of this longer trend, that this is just, it's too short of a time frame. You wouldn't know, because even if you're a non-renewal, you're still under contract for 9 full years, and this is just an 8-year time frame. So I don't think it makes sense to mix those two. What we're trying to tell. I think this map does a good job of telling what it does. These were the both county initiated and owner initiated non-renewals over a time frame. But
Sure.
I would suggest, if you do have the data, well, is that going to be more complicated to extract the
older stuff.
yeah.
No, I'll check. So from 2004.
Well, I mean, that would be like a good tidy, 20-year period. But if it's too time consuming to go back that far, maybe we go back to 2010 or something, or.
Sure. Yeah, I can certainly take a look and see how far I can go, and then I'll talk to Stephanie.
You also can, we decided to use acreages. We could also go, if you want apple to apples, you can go with those 1,200 contracts and see, how they vary.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
this-
could do that. It's just I think the numbers, you're in the thousands there, and here it's just, it'll lose if you try and,
Yeah,
you'd have to shrink this down so tiny. to see.
yeah, so,
And I think acreages do tell you a little bit more,
yeah, absolutely.
the picture, yeah.
But these are contracts compared to, the other option is to bring the acreages into this table that represent these units of contracts. Maybe that would be,
And I just found out I do, the very last year that I can go back to is 2004, but I just try to run that report and it just,
I'm just picturing more of a line graph for the other.
Yeah.
Maybe another, it's just a
Yeah.
line graph. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so At the end of that, back to the maps slide number 5, if we could. What was the final decision on that? Was the assessor going to provide a map for
I
us?
just
or-
sent an email to my mapping department
Okay,
to get that map if it's possible. And I'll share it with you if it is possible. I haven't,
okay,
they haven't responded.
okay, thank you.
We did have, because we're still reporting to the DOC. Whether we get money or not, we still have to do that reporting. We sent that map just recently for 2025.
Okay. But
Effective 1/1/25.
Okay,
so I guess the question is, we're using 2025 statistics and 2025 mapping for this?
I can get.
We're going to use the
I
2024.
can use 2024.
I think that would
Actually,
be good.
That should be better.
Yeah, I think that's
Because
good
the
because we've
twen-
completed the full year and then we've got statistics on that. So yeah, let's use the 2024 and then
Okay.
I can get from Brett just, because right now this percentage is 29% rather than doing that of the whole county.
do we want, we could just strike percentage period.
Yeah,
and
we
then
can.
That's it.
Yeah, but if you wanted to add it to your, do you want to add that to your talking points? I can have Brett easily
Yeah, I guess
say,
so.
that equates to, 71% of all the ag zone
Okay,
land in an incorporated area.
okay, very good. So let's look at, any other conversation about the map? Okay, 2:00, just time check. Williamson Act. So this is, I'd say, probably pretty meaty part of the slide or presentation. Just it really gets more into the detail. But if you have any suggestions for grouping this, less text. Originally, I had information just about the contracts, but I thought I could add Williamson Act 101. I could put Ag Preserve Program at the top. I just kind of wasn't sure what to put up there, but I thought Williamson Act 101 was just the most clear because it addresses the program as a whole. It also addresses contracts. I didn't get anywhere into the details of what the uniform rules say. I thought that might, it's easy to get so detailed into that, it might lose people. So I tried to keep it high level, and I didn't go into like farmland security zones or anything about open space contracts or any of that stuff. So, yeah. And there might be a better way, like I haven't gone through the narrative part, so it might be a better flow if we did the bullets different, but any comments?
My only comment is maybe the bullet that says landowner agrees to follow uniform rules, maybe that bullet and new owners must assume the contract. Maybe those two could go together. I don't know if moving new owners must assume the contract should be moved up or the other one could be moved down.
Oh yeah, and I could do the same with the last one. So it's sort of like landowner commitments or requirements. Agree to follow the uniform rules. Maybe I put that under, I could clump those together, landowner agreements, and put 3 smaller bullets.
Yeah.
Okay, and then also runs with the land. I don't know if that's the best way to say that. It might be confusing to people. We say it on just regular conversation, but I'm not sure that's clear necessarily what that means.
I think it's fine just to, if you were to provide some example, maybe it might
Better.
land better is that,
Yeah.
that if land under contract is sold to a new owner, contract still is in place and the owner needs to assume that contract. It doesn't cancel the contract just because the property
Right.
is sold.
Mhm.
Runs
Runs with the land. Oh, is it? We're not that clever. Oh, it does. Oh, okay. All right. No, that's helpful. Thank
You are
you.
now in legal,
Mm,
Raina.
Speaking legalese.
yes.
Well,
Lawyers are practical.
Yeah. Sometimes there's common sense language. Um, so my comment is regarding flow. So we're in Williamson Act 101 now.
Uh-huh.
I think these things relating to Williamson Act 101 are a continuation of the first slide where we were going to overview and tell the story of the Williamson Act 1965 reasons, and then here's some 101, other 101 information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we, is it possible to go through all the slides and then we go into flow? Could we do that?
Sure.
Okay. Any other comments on Williams Act 101?
I think it's important if we're gonna have kind of what that landowner, a bullet point of what the landowner agrees to follow.
Yeah.
And we say it in a couple of different places in the uniform rules, but I
Mhm.
want to remind ourselves. And this is a good example just at the beginning. I mean, it's of the commercial production reporting requirements. To qualify for Williamson Act contract and maintain ongoing eligibility must be demonstrated that the land is and will be used principally for the production of commercial ag products. If we want to shorten that, but essentially they agree to voluntarily have their lands for that purpose, that it's principally for the production of commercial agricultural products.
Yeah, we can even say that there's a minimum amount of production or some commitment, because that does come up later when we talk about enforcement.
Right. And then whether or not we need to do that, I just think it is sort of enforcing the sense of hierarchy because, if they later get into, these are some of the core requirements you need to meet for the contract. And
Mm,
when, a lot of the kerfuffle has been over,
yeah,
well, over, why am I drawing a
should we do a separate slide just about basic requirements? I didn't want to get into detail of uniform
I
rules.
mean, it could be
per se.
101 basic requirements is like, you need to have at least 40 acres under contract. That's from Williamson Act. I mean,
It's adding another slide, but maybe.
it could be short enough. I mean, if there's like some basic 3 or 4 contract requirements.
Okay, so let's say we did that slide. What would that look like? Contracts 101 kind of.
Yeah, we can just say, yeah, state requires at least 40 acres. Our board, that's a point of interest, I think, super prime.
Yeah.
So weigh whether or not you want to go down that rabbit hole. But you
Yeah.
if you think it was, you can say, the board, recognized unique, productive nature of, small agriculture areas like the Carpinteria Valley and created this program.
Well, we say 40 acres, but it's really, and it gets into
It'd still
the
be-
multi-contracts making up one ag preserve and how.
Oh, once you get into super prime, it's
I
gonna be
know.
Okay, we won't go down the
Yeah,
rabbit
okay,
hole.
okay. So maybe we just keep.
So 40 acre minimum.
But it's not, well, but I think if we say that
And
will.
it gets into the super prime.
Yeah,
And I'm fine with that. I think just for a lot of other reasons, I think it's important to state that, one of the main agreements for entering into the contract is the landowner is going to have their land available for commercial ag production
okay.
as the principal land use.
Do we want to say anything about, because this does kind of come up later when we do the case study, it explains like the cap on the amount of agriculture. So should we say something about limited non-agricultural development, or however we want to call that, like limited?
I would
It-
just
it
say,
does come up later.
Compliance, commercial ag production. Something like that, just keep it. If they want to ask, it's like, yeah, well, the board that was one of the key areas they strengthened in 2007 with, they had the same concern as that about compliance and had these.
Okay. So
Contract 101, are we still thinking of that slide?
I'm not sure. I think it's
You
a,
can just list types of contracts.
I don't know if I want to go down that, that level of detail. I would think that if we could answer that question if it comes up. I just didn't know if we should get into that level of detail because we only have, I'm thinking, 10 minutes.
It's gonna be more minutes answering questions, probably much more.
Uh-huh, I think so. Yeah,
Do you want to make a distinction, sort of like the contract 101 things like the 40 acres and the commercial ag? Those are sort of the core requirements. And then there's compatible uses. And so there's certain things that you have to adhere to maintain your contract eligibility. Compatible uses are a set of uses that may or may not be allowed on contracted land.
so
But
you're
it's a
saying
secondary consideration.
added in as a landowner requirement? Is that what you're talking about?
Not as a landowner requirement. I don't know if, I mean, it's not necessarily part of the contract in and of itself. It's more of the Uniform Rules Ag Preserve Program. And there's core contract requirements, but the Uniform Rules and state and Williamson Act allow for other compatible uses that may or may not be related to agriculture
Yeah.
to occur on lands. And, you can give some of those examples. It might be just a good 101 understanding to understand the difference, because now that AEO is out there, they're conflating that, well, the board supported AEO, therefore they're on the same par as your commercial ag production requirements.
Okay, so for this slide in particular, which is about the Williamson Act, it's very general for the program. What I'm hearing people say is the board is that we might want to, or the committee, that we might want to have a second slide related to contract content, but we're unsure about that. But what's on here, it sounds like everything on here is something we want to keep. We're just talking about adding more and maybe grouping them together. Okay.
Yep.
And then David, what you were talking about, is that for this slide, or are you thinking, because it's more related to just general knowledge of the program itself? And like I said, I mean, you could easily do 2 slides, like the program stuff, it's voluntary, it, runs with the land. Then you get into more like details of the uniform rules themselves, which is you have to assume the contract and landowner agreement. What does that mean? So I think you could do both.
I think
It
you
would
can do, I think that's a
just
good
be a
idea.
longer presentation. Yeah.
Just because they may talk about, if we had a second slide that was more uniform rule focused, our uniform rules is a combination of restating things that come directly from the Williamson Act, but the Williamson Act also gives the local agency the ability to establish what rules they're going to allow on contracted land. And so that it's both. And so that's important, I think.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we should probably take this slide, make it into 2, have one for the program itself, and then one for contracts, or one for Williams, or uniform rules.
I was speaking to uniform rules.
Okay.
I was thinking this is kind of some basic Williamson Act contract related things.
Uh-huh.
And then the next slide would be continuation of some core things of the uniform rules that includes eligibility requirements for contracts that come from the uniform rules. But it's also state law allows local jurisdictions to establish their own regulations, particularly that's seen mostly in the compatible use sections for uses that could be allowed on contracted land. And And so maybe we just have some of those things in there for the second.
Okay, so have, so my natural reaction is, could you just send that to me, what you're thinking of, but then that, we can't do that, okay. So I heard eligibility requirements, compatible uses. Couldn't we also put in there that the concept of, principal use of the property is agriculture?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
in my mind, I have it like this. I'm just thinking of this, map going through the uniform rules is that we can just start describe, that it includes, the first part is the eligibility requirements
Uh-huh.
for new contracts and to maintain eligibility. One of the key components of that is the commercial ag production requirements. And that's, we can then
Okay.
say that's, sort of the principal tenet of the program that they agree to do this. And then the uniform rule also, state law allows local jurisdictions to include their own regulations.
Mhm.
That's often, most often seen in the compatible uses
Okay.
on contracted lands.
So kind of follow a little bit, I'm thinking maybe a handful of bullet points, kind of following what you're saying with the uniform rules, eligibility requirements and compatibility, maybe something on supportive ag uses.
Yeah, I think supportive ag uses. I mean, that section kind of starts off with the ag related ones like wineries, but then it dovetails into
Yeah.
other compatible uses.
Do we want to get into animal boarding, breeding?
That's too detailed. I mean, I think just that aside, because I think that supportive ag uses is a good transition because it's not just the production, most of it you have to, you have production requirements for both non-prime and prime. Supportive ag uses are things that are beneficial. So it's like wineries or fruit
And that's where maybe it helps to say. and
freezers,
maybe
but then it also allows other uses that just by their nature,
your
you need
board
to
just
site with, on rural lands, telecommunication facilities, other things.
say something about maybe the AE.
And then more, more recent, other uses like limited recreation or other uses. And that, the
Okay.
board has discretion of establishing what those, criteria would be.
Okay, but would we keep here on this slide, just the landowner requires, or requirements, just assuming the contract, that would still stay here, correct?
I think that's a general, yeah.
Okay,
Just one, and maybe this relates to Sergio too, but the last bullet, my thought was that might be more relevant to the compliance.
Right. And so I was gonna suggest maybe having one bullet that says the landowner is required to do the following, and then subcategories, and then so you have assume the contract. They agree to follow the uniform rules. They have to complete an annual questionnaire. And so it's not like it's not like one specific, main thing.
Separate slide for an annual questionnaire.
Yeah, we do have that.
I was thinking perhaps how land is taxed and maybe annual questionnaire, could that be part of one slide
hmm. Okay,
somehow?
The annual statistics.
No, the questionnaire and how WA land is taxed.
Oh, tax.
I had them, yes, I had them separate originally, but we can talk about
Are you
that.
referring to the very first bullet?
No, slide number 7 and 8.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So for this one, is the, maybe the order, do you want to change the order? I was going to put that landowner part at the bottom, or do you have any thoughts on order for this?
I don't, not really, but again, I just
Yeah,
like in the comment about grouping, I thought the landowner is required to do, and then group everything that he's required to do.
okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. All right. I put in the multi-part, multi-level, or multi-parcel contracts under one ownership, because that does come in later.
And,
Yeah.
right, and that's
Okay.
good.
All right, very
I
good.
like that way.
So let's go on to the next slide. 7. So what I'd heard, Alex, you were saying, could we combine slides 7 and 8?
Yeah, I thought they kind of,
Hmm,
The only reason is to try to shrink the number of
Uh-huh,
slides.
absolutely.
Because the goal was 8 to 10 slides, right? Once we start adding, it's gonna.
Right. Yes. So, okay, annual question. Okay, so I just didn't know. I guess the reason I was thinking to put in that slide 8 was because I thought, do they understand what the annual questionnaire is? I don't think did I bring it up before? Maybe I did. Let me look. Maybe it's in a previous slide. The,
And it doesn't have to be like a major thing. I'm,
Oh, it's mentioned, oh, I see what you're saying. So slide 6 already mentions it. So do we even need to call it out separately? Yeah, we don't have to. I put that in there. This is an example of something I added in later, thinking if the committee wants to get rid of it, we can get rid of it. But they're just, in listening to them, they had a lot of questions about these annual questions.
Yeah, I think we should focus on that. I was just thinking perhaps just bringing it under this, how the land
Under
is taxed.
7, yeah, okay. So it
Yeah.
already says,
Make a point there with the annual questionnaire.
so maybe under bullet 3, where it says annual questionnaire is helpful with calculating ag values, we just rephrase that.
maybe,
Um,
yeah, some of what you're
Huh?
saying on page 8, under that bullet.
Like this on page 8, maybe that second bullet there where it says landowner reports changes in land value, production, income, expenses. Maybe I just put that under, as a sub-bullet under annual questionnaire. Helpful in calculating ag values. Maybe I just do that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good idea to.
Okay.
So I'm back on the annual questionnaire slide.
Huh?
So some of the remaining bullets, like return rate decreasing over the last 10 years, would we want to move that under more of the, because my thought was the annual questionnaire kind of is part of compliance as well. And so if we're listing that as, well, here's our compliance tools, maybe that's just the point we highlight in that section, is that we're getting this decreasing rate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or whatever we want to do,
Yes.
but,
No, so I'm going to put an arrow, put under enforcement.
Mhm.
And then we don't need to have that uniform rule in there at all.
No, that's fine.
Sends by postal mail, yeah. So why don't we just take that second bullet, put under landowner reports changes in land use. I'll put that under slide 7 as a sub-bullet under that third slide here. Pull in slide 6 bullet. Okay, great. Thank you for that suggestion. And anything else on this slide 7? What did you think about that, having a plus like that? Is that clear?
No,
I struggle a lot with this.
Yeah, I know, I know.
I don't
So
understand ag value versus,
I have another idea, and I actually, one of the things I want to go back, I think originally, Madam Chair, you had titled this, how Williamson Act properties are taxed, and then you changed it to how land is taxed. I think we should go back to properties
okay,
are taxed, how Williamson Act properties are taxed. Because properties then includes both, and this is what I'm saying here with the ag value and the Proposition 13 value.
yeah,
They're combined into, and they make up this Williamson Act value. But what I want to do, and what I'm suggesting we do here for the first 2 bullets, is replace those 2 bullets with something more along the lines, how it's kind of described under the uniform rules. And so what I would suggest is maybe say, under like one heading, say, the value is calculated for both restricted ag and non-restricted personal use, as follows. And then you have the way it's shown under the uniform rules. The uniform rules has a section that describes how restricted properties are assessed. And then it has a section about how the unrestricted portions are assessed or valued. And then they have the total assessed value. And then that's where the assessor sums the restricted and the unrestricted. So what I'm suggesting is having a heading saying the value is calculated for both restricted and non-restricted. And then say the restricted is calculated by the income approach, which is how it's stated on the uniform rules. We can even throw in the Revenue and Taxation Code 423. That's what gives us the formula. And then next bullet, the unrestricted portions are valued at their market value in accordance with Proposition 13. That's exactly how it's on the uniform rules. And then a third bullet, just summarizing, then the sum of both the unrestricted and the restricted, it give you the final Williamson Act value, something like that. Just kind of like to kind of follow the same idea that's presented under the uniform rules. Unless you guys have a better suggestion. Because I was struggling the way it's written right now. I don't know. What I could do is maybe put it together for you
I
and
was
then
going to
send it to you.
suggest, I think you should just take that slide and
Take
run
it?
with it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And
can do that.
I'm just thinking in
Be
terms
brief.
of be brief, and there's so many, to me, there's different terms, and every time there's a new term, I'm thinking now we need to explain that one. Because there's the restricted and non-restricted, so I don't know if they all know what
You
that
will
means.
know what it
They
is.
will know what that means? Okay. I'm not sure about that. And then we also have the ag value, the Prop 13 value, and then the Williamson Act value. There's just different terms, and
Right.
I just wanted to try and keep it all
Be simple.
minimal as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think and then to kind of, in layman's terms, I mean, also, so write it out and then think about, is there a way to say it so that, Joe Smith on the street understands it? Just
Understand.
says they get the preferential tax on the agriculture component.
Mhm.
They're assessed on structures and other things based on their Prop 13 or market value. Something that's straightforward.
And if there's a graphic that depicts that better, I think that,
Okay.
And this last bullet on
The Williams,
slide 7.
so we're saying sometimes it's not a tax benefit.
yeah, that, I was trying to explain that, how, because there is later on in the slide, there's an example in that case study.
Yeah.
Yeah, it explains how there are sometimes when the prop,
Yeah.
and
And so when Prop 13 value is greater, so yes.
okay, just say when.
No, I'm just trying to understand. I'm not
Oh,
trying to
yes.
change anything.
Yes,
Just trying to make
Yes.
sure we don't have double negation. Or we
Yes.
do have double
Yes.
negation in the.
so,
That was my question. What does greater mean in this? If Prop 13 value is greater, that means the value of, if I'm still assessed at Prop 13, then it's a benefit.
right,
But it's a lower tax.
Correct.
yes.
Okay.
Greater than the economic, and the economic is greater than Proposition.
And originally I had a symbol, for greater than, but I changed that thinking that might be too confusing, so. But you know what? I'll leave that slide to you. And if you think that's however you want to communicate that, maybe it's better coming from you and,
Because, yeah, so we need to understand, they want to know the essence. They don't want to go into these little,
maybe that's too much, is what you're thinking?
Maybe we're sharing too much. But
Yeah.
it's one of the things that this is actually one of the questions that they're asking. isn't it? Let's see.
Yeah, I
Let's-
believe so. There's a lot of questions. Most of the questions are regarding the tax.
Uh-huh.
How we can recover the
Yes.
tax.
Yes.
If defaulted.
Yes.
Or not meeting the
Yeah.
requirements.
Yeah, I mean,
And there are people that go out of the contract sometimes because it's too, it doesn't make
It
sense.
doesn't make sense
anymore,
because
but
they're
maybe,
already taxed at.
yeah, and I don't think they're that concerned about those. What I heard was more concerns about county-initiated non-renewals. And then, why are these landowners, leaving the program? So, I mean, and then how do we, our people, and of course, enforcement and compliance, so.
yeah, I mean, they may have some, I mean, I guess be prepared to ask, like, how is, because we were saying they're getting the preferential assessment on the agriculture. And that, but then there's some instances where there's high value agriculture that doesn't make sense for them to be in the program. Whether it's, that's what we saw with a lot of the greenhouses is that, per square foot, the value was so high and they didn't have a lot of other structures or things for assessment that it didn't make a lot of benefit to them being tied up in a program. But they may also ask you something about like, how is cannabis, assessed? And just thinking, because it's a high value crop too, is it, is that, do we, but we haven't seen a lot of non-renewals of cannabis properties, which is interesting.
Hmm.
But
They don't have time to mess with that.
yeah,
Okay.
that's,
So I'm
tax
gonna-
glitter.
I'll put, Sergio, your name here on this slide.
Okay.
Okay, and, okay, we got rid of slide 8. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
New title for slide 9.
new title, okay. What was your thinking on the title for this one? I was putting that on there. It's funny because I put that in, somebody else said to me, "Oh, that's great. That's exactly how the board thinks. That's what they're going to want to see this." But it's kind of like, that's what we're asking, I think, in some respects, is how much is this costing the county? So,
Could we define it as a tax benefit instead of cost of the county?
yeah, that's what I had originally on the,
Yeah,
I changed it, but
I think, well, another opportunity for storytelling with,
mhm.
um,
With style, because.
Well, with style.
Tell more stories. I think I'm a little more brief, but
no, I know, but I'm getting the concept
Yeah.
because this is just, I mean, my notes on this slide was balanced with policy benefits of program. And so that's really the main point is that, and we haven't introduced the loss of subventions, which is a big issue. I mean, ultimately, what this slide could lead to is a conversation of, like Lavanina said, there's a lot of revenue that's out there, and why are we providing preferential tax benefit if people aren't doing something? And so, but it also ties into, it shouldn't just be on dollars and cents because there's significant policy benefits that the board has supported with this program throughout the years, and
right.
acknowledging that they're not receiving the full tax assessment. And that is still the same story, even more so, I think, that there's still the important policy benefits of the program. But, so that's, I think this slide still needs to be balanced with that perspective, however we want to tell the story.
And we do see that earlier on. Yeah. I mean, there really wasn't a slide for that. I mean, we got information from, Royce, which is very helpful, and we didn't get into that, but that's more of a narrative. Yeah, at the beginning. So before we get to the title, what are the content? What do you think about the table? I tried to explain what the table was saying. Did I get the table right?
Yeah, no, the table is right.
Just nice to see these numbers. Wow.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, this is gonna open their eyes like, oof, 22.
Well, and
million.
I mean, honestly, I don't know what, I brought that up to, the directors and higher level folks and myself, and, I didn't ask specific, they didn't see this slide, but I said, that's something that, we're gonna need to balance that. They agreed. I didn't get any specific guidance on it, but they're all gonna be looking at the PowerPoint, so maybe they'll,
And I would throw my hat in even further reason to balance it with the policy, because it is basically that the county has up to this point, and is at a decision point for all other purposes, strongly supports continuation of agriculture. And so if, on a hypothetical, there was no Williams-Net program, the county would be getting additional $22 million a year in tax revenue. But at what cost? From a policy perspective, is that putting pressure on agricultural landowners? Now they're going to have higher assessments. There are already, challenges with maintaining agriculture. And so, there's a lot of other policy benefits. It's not just, total the $22 million in revenue. And they know that. But I guess this is just a gross information, which is interesting information, but it's just one data point. And so that's my point, is that if we can weave it into, the 50 years of the program that the county's been involved in it, and the policy benefits, presumably still continue. Yeah, and we already know we're not getting the $600,000 in subvention funds that we used to do.
Maybe this may be a good place for the subvention information. I don't know.
Yeah, if we had more time, because even just reading this, it kind of talks about statistics at this point in time. I thought there would be more information, on counties that may have decided not to continue the Ag Preserve program. The only one that I saw was Imperial County.
Which county, sorry?
Imperial,
Oh, Imperial.
yeah.
Okay.
I think there was a survey that was done by the assessors, the
State
association.
Yeah.
And I can look it up. I think it's been a few years since that survey
Yeah.
was made.
And they offered, the state, they made the changes. Well, you can, if the board wants to offer 9-year contracts instead of 10-year contracts, they can do that. And some counties, I think, took, that approach.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I wanted to bring up. I think that was one of the suggestions under the Department of Conservation's website. They were talking about how you could be adding an extra X if you reduced the term to a 9-year instead of a 10 years. And I forget what that is about, but I think there's a way that the counties as a way of recouping some of the money that's not being sent by the deals.
So it's a different, the counties can add some tax valuation, and also, and it's not just the 9-year in and of itself results in that difference. It's, while they're doing that, they can do some different valuation.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Stephanie, you probably know the crop value, annual crop value. How does that relate to this, to the tax and to the tax difference?
it's like,
I use it all the time when I'm.
I should know. It's 1.6 billion, I want to say, is that right?
Annually, right?
Yeah.
So that brings, like, the value of the land is, was the 8 billion, right? Is that what we put here together? The total roll value plus Prop 13 value?
Oh, I didn't add those two. The two, did you want me to do that?
No, I'm just kind of brainstorming here
Oh, I
to show to show the value of the program, right? In a way, let's say if you get rid of these, 22 million tax benefit, there will be more development, right? People would go and develop, rezone and develop.
Right. So you're gonna have fewer ag and,
And then the ag is gonna be displaced at one point. So it's a major industry in in our economy. So perhaps, make that point somewhere to justify the program in a way.
well, and then I'm sure Stephanie's more familiar in her office, but I mean, even just hearing from the AAC and the grower shippers, it's not just,
It's that multiplier.
it's the multiplier effect and all the jobs that,
There's
are
numbers
tied to
there.
that.
Yeah, cumulative, impact.
Yeah, there's just a study that was just done about that concept. And there's an estimate provided, but I don't know if that's out there.
So, I don't know. For me, it would be interesting kind of to know. I don't know if
Yeah.
that is too complicated.
And Royce provided that report from the UC,
Yeah.
was it the UC, something? Yeah,
But in listening to what they were saying, I think they're gonna ask us this. They would wanna know this question, like, I could see them asking, how much is this program costing the county? I could see that easily being.
Well, I
asked.
don't know. I mean, I don't know that we have those numbers on administration, like what are our department costs
But like,
and
what's
this is just the tax. Yeah,
they're
yeah.
listening. Yeah, that's what I.
I think this is helpful and useful in gross information as a data point. But it then brings into that balancing, what are the other policy benefits of this and what are the consequences?
Right,
There's a lot of consequences that you can start.
right. And this is just a
It's just data,
factual
yeah.
data. All we're providing them, we're not even getting, this is just what they were asked to give us in a nutshell kind of thing. So I was just gonna look up our report. So how would you guys like to change up this slide? What are your thoughts? I heard the title, definitely change the title.
I would suggest taking the word tax. So you have Prop 13 value, 2024 value. It's just so that it's not confusing. So in other words, so yeah, 2024 tax value if there were no Williamson Act program. Total roll value 2024 value, so take away tax with,
Okay, so tax
with-
value in the assessor's world is having those two words next to each other is confusing.
it's confusing.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
The 1% basic tax,
Yeah,
that is right. Property tax collected with and without.
So is total roll value?
That's the
inaccurate
total
statement?
roll value.
So would maybe we make the title Williamson Act total roll value? I mean, that's kind of
Yeah.
the leading, is that a
That's
different way
accurate.
to say, we're going to talk about what the total roll is with the program and without the program?
And without the program. What the roll value would be without the program.
Maybe as a transition, temporary change in the title, we call it Williamson Act total roll value.
and is that common total roll value? Does board members all know what that is? Is that pretty?
I'm hoping I mean, how, that's what we enrolled. That's what,
Okay.
So maybe because you were kind of using this first line to kind of say what you're going to be talking about. So it illustrates the tax, is that correct? Would you say it that way? The
yeah,
tax
we can also
savings?
say, instead of roll,
Value savings or?
taxable value. And then
Yeah.
instead of saying the difference, yeah, the savings.
So illustrates the taxable savings? Or what were
Or
you,
the table below.
or is this a slide that you would like to just, maybe you rework it?
I can rework it.
Okay. Maybe we just have Sergio rework this slide.
Okay.
Okay.
The assessor's office.
Okay.
Work it.
All right.
Want to make sure that I,
Okay. But any more comments to provide to Sergio? Because we can't, go back and forth offline. It'll just be Sergio and I meeting again. I'm thinking we'll probably have another ad hoc
I
meeting.
guess maybe with your conversations that you've had with Jose and Lisa and Michael.
Uh-huh.
I just, maybe that's the department that they were throwing out, the board members when they're asking these questions, but they were saying, treasurer tax collector.
Yes. Yeah.
Are they the appropriate person to answer some questions that, have we engaged them?
the tax collector they don't know anything. They just collect they just collect the money.
I noticed that too, but I assumed that they were just thinking, they just didn't understand. the
That's what I was
revenue
thinking,
center.
but I was thinking, and they're probably equally not the right persons to try to dive into the question, do we have any tools to go back and recoup some revenue? They wouldn't be, I don't know.
I didn't get there was a lot of traction there. I brought that question up to
Okay.
those folks and said, this is a question that came up and they were like, yeah, no, we.
Yeah,
no, we didn't."
Perhaps approach Harry with the information that we are invited to go to the board, and he might, I don't think he likes to go there if he doesn't have to. The tax collector, just, he might have some ideas. I don't know.
I'll leave it up. I mean, it sounds like
Okay.
the other managers kind of thought it was not a key point that we.
Yeah, I know that they
Route,
restrict
yeah.
themselves just to collection, but also, yeah.
Okay. All right. Slide number 10, how do you get out of the Williamson Act contract? I put cancellation, limited circumstances only. County must meet findings, immediate tax increase. Value.
So I would flip these and have non-renewal first.
Mhm.
And then under the preferred method, I would also just like hyphen Williamson Act, because that is from coming down from the state, that's the preferred method is non-renewal.
Oh, preferred method by the Williamson Act? Okay, according to, or,
Yeah, or something, just,
okay.
you can just.
And one thought I had, I don't know if this I could make this like a little table. So you have cancellation, make it like a table, organize it differently. I was just a thought I had. Less text.
I don't think it's necessary to have a table.
Okay, all right. One's gradual, one's immediate. So like, yeah, they're kind of put,
Didn't
Non-renewal
Tyler
first.
mention another way about getting out of the Williamson Act?
Who? Oh,
County Council.
County council?
Ye- yes,
Yeah.
no, I brought that up I said there's really three ways, and I brought that up, and it was kind of like, yeah, well, that's the same with everything, and
Yeah.
so I didn't really
Okay.
include that, but I did bring that up that we did discuss it. Okay. Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, and we could, I mean,
So under cancellation, county must meet findings. What does that mean?
the findings are, in the Williamson Act, government code, there's certain findings that the board has to make, and they make sort of a initial findings, and then that gets sent to Department of Conservation for review before it gets finalized. So in this, in the government code, there's some things that they need to find.
I could say county must meet government code findings or government code requirements. Is that more clear? Maybe not everybody knows what findings mean. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's almost like, yeah, make findings, or I don't know if meet is the prop.
Oh, I see,
that's-
the vocabulary there, okay, must.
I'm not sure that make is better at all.
And would we say county or would it be board? So I could change that to board.
And then I would probably add a new third bullet. I mean, you can keep, or squeeze it in
Under cancellation?
under cancellation above immediate tax increase and put 12.5% cancellation fee.
Is
What?
it a penalty? Or should we say penalty fee or just 12.5?
Just say fee.
I think it's a cancellation fee. It's the, well, but it's in, I think the 12.5 is important because it's, I mean, that's
Yeah,
of the, if that's of the market value.
That is
not
right.
The restricted
Of-
value.
Yeah, 12.5% of the current market value.
Right. So it could be a big check somebody's writing.
Right.
Okay,
So
should I put in non-renewal that there's no fee then?
I'm okay with the gradual tax increase. I would just say on, instead of doing the findings,
That's where I was saying, I was trying to make it sort of like comparative.
same, but
That's why if you had a chart, it might be more clear.
Yeah, I mean, gradual fee increase is,
That's not the fee, though. I mean, there's.
It's the taxes.
That's the taxes,
Right.
but this one is an immediate tax increase, gradual tax increase.
but I mean, I think there's differences too, is that obviously in non-renewal, I think what I was going to suggest instead of the findings is that the contract continues for 9 full years, even though once non-renewal starts, it's still, they're still
Yeah.
under contract for 9 full years.
I'm,
So how would we say, and then cancellation is also an immediate, ending of the contract.
yeah, there's no need
Yeah, it's immediate contract, contract ends,
termination,
contract
Yeah.
is terminated.
Thank you.
immediate termination.
And this one is really, is a
Yeah.
9-year.
Instead of the rolling 10-year contract, you start a countdown and
Yeah, so for non.
And they need to be in, Compliant.
that was going to be my other bullet after that is that they,
presentation, right? We don't need to write everything on the slide. You can say that in presentation. Much more information instead of adding more information to our slides.
Yeah, I'm a bigger fan of that.
and that's fine, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think those
Yeah.
are important things.
So you said 9-year, what was the phrase, 9-year,
rolling,
Well, I would just say the contract continues for 9 full, even, once non-renewal starts, so like thinking of
or
your.
how do I say that, 9-year,
Well, if you're not going to put it in the,
I'm not, but even in the notes, I
Yeah.
need to put it in there, so.
I would say
9-year.
just once non-renewal starts, contract continues for 9 full years. And then the other point that Alex said that I agree is that, that they're still subject to the contract in compliance with the contract and uniform rules.
another comment I want to make is I'm struggling with the word increase, tax increase, because in some cases, it's not an increase. In some cases, it just remains the same because it's already being,
Right?
Tax.
It's sort of like the preferential assessment diminishes.
So immediate tax
Change,
immediate return to Decision 13, because it may not be an increase all the time. I
right,
mean,
so
we have,
immediate tax,
Back?
impact, yeah, that's good. Effect or impact,
okay,
right, thank you.
okay. That will work.
What about the 2 types? I was trying to explain that because we do have the graph, so this is where I did it. What do you think? Okay.
I'm okay with that.
And I could strike, just keep it real simple, landowner initiated, county initiated. I mean, I don't necessarily have to have these other parts after it.
Yeah, I mean, you could just even say, because you're under non-renewal, you can just say, can be initiated by landowner or county. And just have one, instead of two types, just have that last bullet. You say non-renewal initiated by landowner or county.
Yeah, right. Okay. All right, 3 o'clock. Anyone want to take a break? What do you guys think?
Want to just power through?
Arthur, Tyler, did you want to take a break, or Teresa? Okay,
Get her done. Okay.
we have, 1, 2, 3, we already talked about 3, but 4 more slides. Okay. So the next one is compliance and enforcement. Any comments on these?
I do have one. Under the bullet that says top 3 non-compliances, I'm thinking that it's 4. I'm thinking that the landowner didn't follow through on permit conditions. I'm thinking that's another non-compliance. It's not, well, let me put it this way. It's not part of the split contracts. It kind of, the way it's written right now, it's not part of the split contracts created by changes in ownership. Does that make sense? I don't,
Yeah, I thought it was kind of, maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but I thought it was like when,
Maybe.
for example, when we have parcel map, they split, lots, and now those 2 lots are sold off to different owners, and they were supposed to, when they went through the permit condition process, they were supposed to get replacement contracts for those.
but that's a split by a lot line adjustment, I'm
Yeah.
thinking. That's what you see under the P&D.
Yeah,
Exactly.
these are just maybe a contract that someone created where they had 2 parcels under one
Two
contract.
parcels,
And, okay. Yeah, I
And they
totally get
recorded
what you
the-
mean. Yeah. Okay. So
so
just,
maybe that bullet, landowner didn't follow through on permit conditions. Maybe
move it
maybe
in.
that should be reworded. But I think it's a separate, it definitely is a separate bullet point. So then my suggestion is make it top 4 non-compliances and then reword the landowner one.
Would you reword the landowner one?
Landowner didn't follow through lot line adjustment conditions. What do you think, David? I don't think you like it.
Oh, no.
That's going to be confusing. I think I tried to introduce it earlier on, like the multi-parcel contracts. I
Yeah,
think that's going to be,
okay. But you guys understand what I'm trying to say? It's the situation where we get a deed and it's a sale of a portion of a contract.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that splits the contract.
Maybe that's,
And even lot splits can create potentially,
yes.
potential
Maybe-
for non-compliance. Similar to lot line adjustment, so,
purest form.
yeah. But we,
Parcel of the parent contract to sell to somebody.
Mhm.
Can't have
So-
multiple.
Property.
Owners, multiple or different ownership.
Instead of saying changes in.
Maybe-
contracts period, but say,
Changes in ownership?
Huh?
Just parcel sale,
Portions, partial
Partial
ownership.
change in ownership? No?
Contracts split by changes in ownership. Well,
yeah.
it doesn't really officially, I mean, we, the assessor is unofficially, we do our separate numbering.
You did before, right? Not now.
Um,
We do say in like the previous slides, single and multi-parcel contracts. Multi-parcel contracts must be under one ownership.
so,
Maybe
yeah,
there is where I could
yeah, use that as,
describe a little bit. Or explain. May have one ag preserve, but there are multiple parcels under one ag, which you will later see can be an issue if those lots are sold.
Maybe we just say.
oh, here, transactions that transfer a portion of a contract.
I kind of I liked Sergio's, where did you find it? Which pages?
So I was on page 50, but I just, transaction that transfers a portion of, I mean, I'm saying a portion, but it says transactions that transfer all land restricted.
That describes it, I think, but I think it's that sale. It's the sale of the land. Yeah.
But it's also partial, it's not the whole, 'cause then it's an
Yeah.
assumption, so it needs to be partial.
Partial
sale,
change
contracted
in
land,
ownership or, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
partial.
Partial sale. Okay, what was it now?
Partial sale.
Or no, I think sale of a partial contract.
Not, it's
No.
on the contract.
That's true.
Partial or just
Partial sale.
sale of
Portion of contract.
yeah, I think sale of a portion of the
Contracted land.
yeah. Well, it's a separate ag preserve, so you could say sale of portion of premises, then I don't want to get into the sale of portion of
I mean, we use partial parcel cancellation. Partial contract. Maybe,
It's gonna
maybe
be a
just
little tricky.
wordsmith it, I mean, what sounds
Yeah,
best, but
yeah,
I think we just want to
yeah.
make it clear that.
Yeah,
that's-
yeah.
That's a.
Okay,
goes off the partial
sure.
sale.
Yep, and that, just kind of thinking that one would be the first one. And then maybe then lot line adjustment, or do we want to say lot line adjustment or, but you also mentioned lot splits.
I was trying to think of just.
Yeah,
What is most frequent, the less frequent.
exactly. So the first one would be the portion of
I
the
think we see
contract.
those.
Yeah, those are the most common.
And then would I guess the second one would be the insufficient.
Mhm.
And the how do we want to say that? Landowner didn't follow through on
Lot line-
LLA, well,
Yeah,
lot line adjustment is longer than permit, so. That's why I said permit condition.
mhm.
How else can we say that?
Condition of
Most of the time
approval.
It's replacement. So it's your replacement.
permit conditions?
So landowner didn't
Failure to
obtain a
follow-
replacement.
What about failure to follow permit conditions?
Well, but, I mean, that, it's, I think,
To
to
open,
obtain the, yeah, replacement contract.
okay,
It's probably
A more
better.
general
And it covers lot line adjustments. It covers whatever we decided, hey, you need a replacement
But is
contract.
that gonna be a new term? Failure to obtain new.
I mean,
'Cause I think
New
you
or-
add a new term, it's like, what's that? You have to leave it in earlier. Just one more thing. Anyways, I don't want to bog us down, so I'll figure that one out. Try something else. And then the county initiated non-renewal is Apex enforcement tool. I could rephrase that. I could say key, main, or I just wanted to explain that. I don't think it gets touched on before, and that's what led me to the next slide. So I thought that.
I kind of like this very last bullet to go kind of together with the very first one. Because that's a reaction. That's, the county usually initiates non-renewal because of a reaction, because we were looking at something that didn't meet the requirements.
Okay, so maybe that I do, that first bullet is number, is right before county initiated non-renewal.
Mhm.
Okay. And then I say.
That's my suggestion.
County initiated. Too long of a sentence.
Yeah.
Phrases.
Well, I mean, since your title is compliance and enforcement, we have a heading, and then pretty much all the first bullets are on compliance,
Uh-huh.
and then you have a heading enforcement at this last bullet.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's part of
So
the enforcement part.
is enforcement under current program is reactive?
No, that's under, well, I mean, that could be,
I think that's more of enforcement.
That's part of the enforcement too.
Yeah, I would say that bullet.
Yeah,
is
two
under
bullets go
enforcement.
on there.
okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Put that under the
That's good.
first.
Yeah.
We'll have two bullets under enforcement.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that sounds good.
Mhm.
Okay, that sounds good. And then the county initiated non-renewal is that's too long. Any thoughts on striking, how to make that shorter?
Which, one?
That last bullet is too long.
Just, I mean, if we have the heading enforcement,
Uh-huh.
you can, your bullet can be pretty simple. It
Yeah.
could just be county initiated non-renewal.
Yeah, very good. Like that. Very good, thank you.
like everything else?
Almost done.
Almost.
Okay, we're on 12. So I did this slide because it just seemed like there were so many questions that came up about the non-renewal process. I thought, boy, this is where if you had a graphic, that would probably be better than a bunch of words on a slide. I'd have to work with someone to help me with that. So adept at making images and something with circles and arrows. This is probably not the first time we've had to explain a county process, so what do you guys do for P and D? Get that to the board, do you do images? Like, what do you guys do for cutting down on wordiness? Yes, right.
So maybe that's
Opportunity.
use it as a
to-
springboard. Previously wanted a client. Here's some of that. Development. Maybe it can just be something. I think that's the important part that APAC, I think we do probably overboard, try to continue items and, probably provide many opportunities to notify property before we take action. So I think that could be sort of here.
I just realized your microphone
you
is
gonna-
off. And the other thing I was gonna say is, this actually sounds like a David slide. And maybe David can put it together. I know. Could we have a contributor?
Do you think we need a slide?
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, since we might logically out of this, continue this to our regular,
Yeah, we're gonna
regular
do that.
meeting.
Yeah.
So if that's what the subcommittee requests, then I can bring it for the next.
Let's
regular
do that. Thank you,
Okay,
Tyler.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
love
thanks.
it. Hey, dude, hey, we're giving something to you too, Alex.
Well, if you need, I mean.
Okay, so I'm gonna put David on here.
I'm going to work on slide 11.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent. Okay, how about the,
But I mean, are you okay with that kind of springboard kind of?
well, what I heard was, scrap the slides, say it. Is that what I was hearing?
I think rather than having 9 different bullets of step A through Z of the non-renewal, County Nation non-renewal, transition as part of that is, before we get to that point, we're in the looking at the compliance. We work hard to try to get compliance with the
Oh, yes.
opportunities for
do that in the- do
compliance.
That in the previous.
And then when
Yeah.
there is, an impasse, then here's the 3 remaining steps.
Yes. So that would be, under slide 11, you're getting into,
Correct.
um,
Getting some of the work that APEC does to help the
Oh.
landowner come in compliance, and then here's the remaining steps to
Yes.
get it to the board to consider
yes.
non-renewal.
And then you would summarize this slide a little differently. Okay, very good. I'm good with that.
Oh, sorry, that wasn't slide 11, that was slide 12, right?
Yeah, you're doing slide 12.
12,
Yes.
yep.
Yeah. Okay, great. Any comments on, back to, 13 now? Because David's going to take care of that, 12, and then 13 was trends. Any other thoughts on this part? I put 2017, 2025 non-renewal start year. I think it needs more bolder font and stuff. It's just too light colored, but, and there's nothing for 2021 at all. That's just, there was no data to show that.
Well, that
Um,
would have been what we discussed in 2020.
Mhm.
And
They might ask why all those county initiated non-renewals in 2020. Do we have an
Yeah.
answer for that?
well, I mean, I think that, well, so that's the answer, is because what the APAC recommended for non-renewal would have been, in a normal year, would have been recorded in 2021. And nothing was recorded because maybe of the pandemic. And everything from 2021 was actually recorded in 2024. And now you see it as a big blue line for 2025. So again, we're
Say
looking,
that again? I didn't quite follow. Like 2021 shows,
Yeah, so
when the start of a
Activity from the
non-renewal,
calendar year.
that would have been
Ex-
back in
20.
2020. So
2020, exactly. So we're looking, so what we're showing for each of the years was approved the previous year,
yes,
typically,
right.
right? So in 2021, we would have seen the blue line that we see under 2025. Well, maybe not the whole thing, but most of it would have been on the 2021 year. But because there was a pandemic and those were overlooked, nothing is showing up under 2021. Instead, we see those 2021 non-renewals being recorded and effective on 2020, in 2025. Does that make sense?
22.
No?
Oh, wait, 2022 though, why would, if it, I guess I'm wondering like two things when I look at this. What's the spike about in 2020? So those are ones that were probably reviewed in 2019. So we should probably go back.
Change the policy.
We don't even have to, we weren't,
Remember, there was, I mean, the interpretation of the or even the policy. I remember the board uh, insisted
Oh.
that we don't need application for non-renewal.
I
if
think
it
that's,
is
I think that's the reason for the big
Yeah, that's the
spike.
big.
Oh, okay.
Owner initiated in
Oh, so,
2020.
okay, so say that again. So in 20, because the board changed policy for no, board.
Or
change.
an owner initiated,
renewal.
didn't need,
They didn't need the application with the planning and development,
No application, no fee, right?
no fee for sure.
Yeah, okay, good. That's
so
that.
that's the
helps.
big spike.
And then 20,
2020.
and then 2021, there isn't anything.
There isn't anything because
Nothing occurred in 2020 because there were no county initiated non-renewals or owner.
actually there were. So the county approved, I mean, not the county, but APAC recommended at least five contracts for non-renewal.
In
but they weren't in
2021.
2020.
Oh,
And they weren't recorded in 2021. That's why there's nothing in 2021.
Ah, I see.
And that was because of the pandemic. I'm
Ah,
trying, assuming.
yes.
And so those were overlooked and nothing was recorded until 2024 and 2025 is when
Was
we
it
see-
2022?
Nope.
Really?
In 2022, those would have been approved in 2021. Because we're always recording, they become effective the year after they were approved.
Uh-huh, yeah. Right.
So 2022, everything that was approved in 2021 was recorded. And so you see those 2022 contracts, non-renewals in blue.
Yeah.
I thought 2025 is showing because they built up in 2023 and 2024, but it sounds like you're saying that's not the case.
I think there were some 2020s. I may be mistaken. From what I remember, I think there were some
So-
2020s.
So, yeah, just,
Maybe it's a combination of.
yeah, I think, on the right-hand side, the blue, again, these are when the non-renewals start. So 2025 are the slug of contracts the board saw in October of
what we're talking
2024.
about.
Right. And so with that slug, I'm looking on my list, there's 5 of those that APAC took action in 2020 on.
Uh-huh.
And so that was like Pursuit, American Land Management, Focus
Right.
Capital Holdings. So those were things that, because they just got stalled in P&D because staff turnover and they just,
Mhm.
other reasons, but,
Weren't recorded in.
it wasn't that, it really wasn't an APAC.
Here's a question, we don't point that out because that was discussed
Right,
already.
right.
Perhaps we make the slides so when APAC looked at them, I'm just thinking maybe we adjust the slides so the numbers aren't when the board, or then when it became effective, but we just say when APAC recommended non-renewal. I don't know, it's not as official.
No, because I think that's shining a light. That's passive aggressive on our end.
No, I was just saying that it wouldn't, it wouldn't point, I was trying to do it the other way because I didn't want it
Oh, I see.
badly and
Just
like,
to
well, why
show.
are these gaps? You know, you're not showing any gaps. You're just saying
These are, part of our
our process
process. These are when
when APAC,
APAC took a motion to,
yeah,
right? So it's telling part of the story, but it doesn't really
it's not
relate to
shining
the
a light.
non-renewal year or any of
Yeah.
those.
But that, I could see where you're saying, David, because the very next slide is the case studies.
2025, these could not happen. This many could happen in the current year. So just making a point that these contracts recorded in, or if it was that recorded in by the end of 2024, for example.
Yeah,
And they are effective.
that's your talking point.
January 1st,
Right.
2025. That's why
Right.
they show.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so to be clear, or we had earlier talked about changing the title, right? So that it would be non-renewal start year or something like that of the graph heading.
Right, that's,
And yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to log the issue of, this blue bar in 2025 too much. I think they understand it. It's just if they ask why is there nothing in 2021, it's partly related to that, and it's partly related to the pandemic.
Yeah, well, that's what Sergio was saying.
Double check exactly the year when we changed the policy on, we need to figure that out, exactly the year. I know the one district was very particular about that.
You want to do that, Alex? Maybe check the year that could you maybe do that?
That was Peter Adams. Yeah, he wanted.
yeah, Peter Adam was the
Oh.
attorney, non-renewing a lot of contracts in the North County.
Well, he was board supervisor at that time.
Yeah, they just didn't want, they didn't feel it's appropriate to
Oh, His
to
brother did.
charge the fee and have a case and planner. They just wanted it straightforward to the recorder, to the clerk of the board, actually. The form would be filed to the clerk of the board and they would record, but I don't know how it happens. That's a good point to discuss probably at some point to see how these things happen again. Do they go to the clerk of the board? Or do they take the whole non-renewal to the recorder's office?
I don't remember.
The owner initiated.
Oh, owner initiated.
It might be earlier than 2019, just because my tracking table that I have for the non-renewals, in my heading, I say, this report is for tracking non-renewals recommended by APAC and owner-initiated non-renewals in 2016 and earlier. So presumably after 2016 was when they can go directly to recording their own non-renewal. That's why I didn't track it. So it might be earlier than 2019.
Yeah,
Okay.
we just don't want to be wrong.
Yeah, so let's find that out. And then one other question I had was that might come up is, when did the board start to put on the agenda? Is that something relevant we want to have at our back pocket, that piece of information? When the board or committee started putting on that,
Ongoing eligibility.
yeah, ongoing eligibility, and does that play into more non-renewals, or? That's something that I might come up.
I mean, I guess I wouldn't lead with it. If it comes up and you wanted to respond, I would say, I think we've tried to be more, I mean, it's fairly recent, within the last 5.
It was, I think,
to 8
before my time.
Yeah, I would say like last 5 to 8 years or so.
Okay. Okay.
If you wanted to include another line to this graph about the trends between how many contracts, I've already have a list here for you ready to go from 2004 to 2024. Just let me know if you want this data.
Yeah.
You mean in just expanding the timeline on this with the same county initiated and?
Well, no, I'm not talking about non-renewals. I'm talking about the number of contracts.
We're going to
with
do a
county-
separate. Were we
County,
do a
or
separate-
were you?
The separate slide that we talked about earlier was just on the acreage, like the total under contract each year for 20 years since 20.
I'm talking about, instead of acreage, I was able to, right now, pull the list of all the number of contracts,
Oh,
which
sorry you did that work. Yeah, no, I thought we had talked about that.
acreages,
Which was more relevant to graph over that time period.
if you want acreage is,
It's gonna
that's
take more
doable
time.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So maybe if you could work on that
Okay.
and then for the next
sure.
meeting.
So
Okay.
then that additional slide, is that something you can work on, Sergio? Or
You mean another graph?
another graph, a second graph showing number of
Showing-
acreage and using, have you ever done that with you can send it to me and I can make another slide. Why don't you do that? Just send me the
Just send you the
in
data.
Excel file and I'll take care of that.
You got it.
Okay. Okay, very good. Let's go on to that last slide here, which is a lot of information on this one. And we talked about changing the name from case study to I could just call it October 15, 2024 cases or something like that. This was something that was a suggestion from Lisa. So I think what she was trying to do was to bring it back to reality so they have sort of just an understanding of maybe explain some of the concepts that we already touched on earlier about the
Mhm.
value of the contracts and then also why it went back for non-renewal. And we had talked about at some point making like a pie chart over the last 10 years. Why do people go in for non-renewal? But we'd have to go through every contract and look at those. So I did this in lieu of that. And it kind of does reflect, I mean, in a very small sample set.
Mhm.
But
The one thing I want to point out is that the numbers that you see, these are the assessed values, not really tax values. The taxes, the basic tax is 1% of these numbers, 1%. In other words, for contract 03 AP 012, the tax difference, if you're talking about actual revenue, we're talking about 1% of the 434,937. That's the additional, what the property owner is going to see as an increase to their tax
okay.
bill.
Difference, value difference, right?
Yeah. So this is actually not tax difference, it's value
Value
difference.
difference.
100 times less, right?
Correct.
So 100. No, what, 15,000?
So it's just showing, okay, so what the,
So
yeah, so is that of interest? Do you think the board is interested in knowing that? Like, for example,
I'm not sure
like
what
this
they're looking-
particular contract, and then the other issue is, do we want to do that?
Yeah,
Is that a
exactly.
wise move? And I struggled with that because originally
Right.
there were names, I took
don't
off the
know.
names and I'm thinking, well, do we want to put somebody's financial data up there? It's tied to a specific contract.
Right.
That might be a legal
Exactly, right.
issue. I don't know. Hmm.
So yeah, no, those are good questions. I don't have the answer. for
Yeah.
them. But I think what they wanted to see was what's the impact, right? Like what's gonna happen? What happens when, so they would have been, yeah, I don't know.
Because and then it's only not really a true valuation difference because it's going to be different at the end. This is just, they're non-renewed, but now their preferential assessment is going to gradually go away. And so you're making certain assumptions, almost like they're back at their market value or something,
Yeah,
which isn't completely true because they're not,
not really
but
because,
they'll get close in a couple of years.
Mhm.
I was just gonna,
I do agree with the chair about sharing all these values.
So the first bullet there shows total tax difference of 1.5. That needs to be changed, right?
Well, I think,
I think the whole slide needs to get reconsidered. I think the part that is most interest there is maybe,
it's the last
Loop.
column.
yeah.
I
that's
mean,
what I'm
maybe,
saying, the reason for non-renewal.
right, maybe if this is just a continuation, that we were previously talking about trends for non-renewal, and then these recent ones, these are the reasons why they were recommended for non-renewal, and it doesn't, it's,
Yeah,
it's just a simple statement. If we were to keep that, the 03 AP 12, which is Klentner, it wasn't ag production, wasn't the reason for non-renewal.
there were three things.
There's a
listed.
couple of things.
Yeah.
I mean, it was,
yeah,
Yeah,
it was.
that made it kind
It was sort of non-ag development.
Yep. There were three things, yeah. So that made it a little more complicated.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think, why did I chose, I can't remember why I chose the ag production, but I did
Yeah.
see that some of
I
them
mean,
had more than one. It wasn't as simple as that.
I mean, it was true. They didn't want to bring land back into production.
It was boarding and breeding also.
Right,
and
that was too large, and then
House,
the lawn area
Yeah.
was personal development.
personal development, yeah, okay. I think the point that Lisa was trying to make was that she wanted to have, it wasn't just her, but it was also, I think Mike and Jose also felt like, yeah, how could we bring this back to the board? Because this is what brought it up in the first place, to kind of, so it doesn't kind of bring it to more of a smaller level and bring it back to what it, originally where we started with was was brought up to the board and they were looking at. But now that, I think I put in the value numbers because you and I were talking
Yeah,
after that
we-
meeting. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But
but we didn't, I don't think that was requested. I mean, it was just
yeah.
you and
don't think
I
So either.
discussing, maybe we
What
should,
might be of interest, yeah.
yeah.
Are you planning to report back to that group?
No, it was left where I would provide them with a PowerPoint slides, and then they'll also see the board letter. Yep, and to reach out to, if I need to reach out to Brett, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, they'll have the opportunity to see a tightened up version of this, and then they can decide whether
Oh,
or
yeah.
not
Yeah, they haven't
to
seen
keep
anything
it or
yet.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was waiting until we've settled on what we want to present before I sent it to them. Hopefully we get this completed, so. Any thoughts on this? Should we,
So perhaps just removing the table or parts of the table, or
Yeah.
maybe have the totals shown.
just show the reasons for non-renewal and get rid of the table? Maybe that's what we do.
Perhaps keep the totals, So you don't have particular,
Just have two columns. One for the ag preserve and one for the reason for non-renewal.
Okay, yeah. But that would give me a little more room to explain the reason for non-renewal, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have more room for
yeah,
a little more history.
yeah, and it made me realize too that pie chart would be harder to do because you have multiple reasons sometimes. Okay, okay, I'll change this one up. Thank you. Okay. So there is the last slide and then order. If you want to discuss order, we can do that at the next meeting.
That's fine.
Okay,
That's fine.
Okay.
We can, once we see a tightened up version,
Yes.
it may make more sense one way or the other.
okay, very good. We want to go through what's expected, or everybody clear on what they need to be doing? You're clear?
Clear, I
Okay.
just want to let you know that for the acreages, I can only go back to 2008 forward. So, but that's,
Okay,
it'll give us.
Yeah,
at
I
least-
think that, my thought was something more than 10 years, just so it's not, at least we'll cover a block, several blocks of starting non-renewal and getting out of non-renewal. So, I mean, we've got 16 years worth of data, so I think that's good.
Perfect.
okay, with that, any public comment on this item? Or do you call for public comment?
We,
Just general public comment.
Okay.
Not on this.
Anybody here from the public like to speak on this item?
We do not have anybody in the audience, so no public comment.
Okay, thank you. And our next item, reports from committee members. Anybody have a report? Okay. With that, I adjourn, and we'll adjourn the meeting at
35.
3:35. Okay, thank you.
just a regular,
Mhm.
the 13th.
Yeah, we don't have another meeting scheduled.